Welcome to Talking Giants, presented by SeatGeek. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, Justin Pennick. And the Giants have made their defensive coordinator hire, finally. The Giants are going to be hiring Shane Bowen, who's been the Titans' defensive coordinator for the last 3 years under Mike Vrabel. Vrabel's out. Shane Bowen's out. He's in with the New York Giants. Justin, we finally have our Wink Martindale replacement.
Yeah, I mean, it was starting to get to the point, Bobby Skinner, where we're not panicking, but we're looking around being like, okay, when is this getting done? Jordan Raanan reported today that the Giant, part of the reason why the process did take this long is because the Giants' top two candidates, you presume that that's Denard Wilson, and then the other one is Bobby Babbage from Buffalo.
The only ones that have been hired, so which makes sense.
Yeah, so the Giants did not get their top two candidates that they wanted, and since the top two options were gone, I will say, the Shane Bowen hire, while it's not exciting, it is really one of the only guys that we have a substantial amount of sample size of what kind of defense he calls and what he's about, or what he's trying to be. So that's good just from us, from us trying to know what he's about and know information wise. Not a sexy hire, but the more that I'm looking into it, the more that I'm definitely okay with it and I'm encouraged. But ultimately the thing that comes down to is, can Joe Schoen bring in good football players for Shane Bowen?
Yeah, Justin, I mean, we did our whole defensive coordinator candidate preview a couple weeks ago, and Denard Wilson and Bobby Babbage were both our top two choices for this, right? And hey, it looks like that's what the Giants, top two choices were. Denard, the Ravens lose. Wilson is officially available to be hired. He picks the Titans over the Giants, and then Babbage, I don't blame. Now, I do blame Dable and the Wink fallout and this Kafka stuff on the reason why Denard Wilson would want to choose the Titans more so than the Giants. With Babbage, I don't, because he just got to be promoted in the same spot that he's been with Sean McDermott.
I want to add a little caveat to that, because I don't want to fully buy into, the Wink Martindale thing is why maybe Denard Wilson didn't come. Dude,
it's year 3 versus year 1.
It's year 3 versus year 1. And even if, let's just say, if Brian Dable, which apparently this wouldn't have been outlandish, and it wouldn't have been the craziest thing if Brian Dable decided to fire Wink Martindale, they decided to let Wink Martindale go after last year because the relationship was so bad, then I think even Denard Wilson would jump at the opportunity coming here. But I think it's year 3, and this regime kind of is up in the air in a way, or it could be up in the air.
Well, the difference is you say year 3 versus year 1, but the deciding factor is that Wink left, right? If Wink had went and was promoted to as a head coach, this job would look a lot more desirable, despite the fact that it's year 3 versus another team's year 1. But nonetheless, we talked about Shane Bowen a couple weeks ago, Justin, and I was like, I don't know why the reaction to this one was so negative, despite the fact that he was ours and the Giants, third or fourth choice, depending on how Jerome Henderson factors into all of this. Because I think he's been a solid defensive coordinator for the Titans the last 3 years. He's young. He's 37 years old. He's been the Titans' DC the last 3 years, was their outside linebacker coach the 3 years before that, was with Vrabel in Houston, spent a couple of years in Kennesaw State, and then was a GA with Vrabel in Ohio State. Runs a 3-4 defense, right? So there's going to be, similarities as far as structure and stuff. You allow Dex to play the nose tackle still. We'll get into all of it, Justin, but I think Shane Bowen has been a solid defensive coordinator. His scoring units have been top half of the NFL every year. Rushing units have been top 5. The issue is the passing defenses have been pretty bad. Now, there's been personnel deficiencies there, but he also hasn't been able to make up for those deficiencies either.
No, I mean, since 2021, number 1 in EPA per play. This is from 2021 to 2023. But against the pass, it's been number 26 in EPA per dropback. Well, then he gets into a conversation of, the Titans have done, probably not the best of jobs surrounding Shane Bowen with talent, which obviously we could talk about and we can get into. But I mean, why I like Bowen, just from where we're at, from where we are with the candidates that were left. He has experience, younger guy, Worked under Vrabel the last couple years. That probably from what some Titans fans are kind of putting out there on Reddit, and even some replies on Giants Twitter. Mike Vrabel definitely micromanaged Shane Bowen at times, where I think some Titans fans were happy that Bowen left, but I also think some Titans fans were open to Bowen coming back so he can kind of run his own defense and let him run his own ship. And also, something that's pretty important to note is 2021 and 2022, Jim Schwartz was like a defensive assistant, like a top-notch
senior analyst
for the Tennessee Titans, which, hey, you could take that, in either way, where I really like that Jim Schwartz worked with Bowen, and, if Bowen could take elements of Schwartz's defense, or do you take that as maybe Schwartz had a little bit more say, and Vrabel being involved, what was Bowen's full-on involvement as defensive coordinator? Because now he's coming to the Giants, where Brian Daboll's the offensive coach, and he's probably going to be very hands-off for the defense. What was Bowen's leadership like in Tennessee, where he probably had a lot of other voices in his ears over the last couple of years?
And that's a huge conversation when it comes to Bowen. Like you said, Mike Vrabel is a defensive coach. He has his handprints on that. And then Jim Schwartz, you saw a lot of the same principles that Jim Schwartz uses, right? Like the inverted coverages, right? And that can be awesome, but it also can, lead you to, giving up big plays in the passing game, stopping the run, simulated pressure. So I think he's a good fit with the Giants personnel if they bring back Xavier McKinney, right? Like I think bringing back Xavier McKinney was pretty important, but vital with him, because I think the safeties in this defense are going to play a huge part. But again, let's get into some of the numbers, and then we'll break it all down on how it's structured and how it works and how it's changed over these 3 years as a defensive coordinator. Got a lot better after the Titans got rid of Derek Ansley and then promoted Bowen there, right? And Ansley was another Giants defensive coordinator candidate who had been with the Chargers the last couple of years. The Titans defense has been 20th in EPA per play since he joined. Points per game. I'm going from each of these categories from 2023 to 2021. 16th, 13th, and 5th. Passing 24th, 27th, and 17th, and then rushing 4th, 1st, and 4th. So again, being able to stop the run, I think they've been really good on the red zone and third down numbers, right? Which is something we look at when we're talking about defensive coordinators. When can you throw disguised looks? Red zone, 1st, 15th, and 7th. Third down, 17th, 3rd, and 6th. So some really good numbers in there for one, just total numbers outside of passing, defense, and then the red zone third down. He's been able to show up.
I have a third down stat before you keep going. I'm gonna stop you if I feel like I have a stat that fits what you're saying. Titans on third down since 2021. I decided to do a lot of since 2021 since it's a 3-year sample size, so why not? Titans on third down since 2021. 9th in overall EPA per play, the second lowest success rate, 13th in EPA per dropback, and 1st in EPA per rush. That was the first stat that I was looking at. I was looking at a lot of explosive play stats, and it's like, it's bad against the pass, and some overall raw numbers are really bad against the pass. When you start to look at the third down stuff, when you start to look at the red zone stuff, that's when you're like, okay, you start to get way a little bit more bought in terms of what he's doing. But I think the main problem is, Bobby, is first and second down. We'll put it at that, and then even like I'll call it the 20 to 20. Your own 20-yard line to the opponent's 20-yard line, where I think that could be the main issue, where allows a lot of drives down the field, but then once the Titans defense gets inside the red zone, they kind of lock down.
And I think that speaks to, like, he was described to me as someone like, hey, you get good players, he's going to be a good defensive coordinator. You get average players, I mean average, and then bad players. I mean, but he didn't have a talented group this past year, right? It was pretty untalented guys with injuries, and they were able to stay afloat defensively. Not good, but at least they were able to stay afloat. Like their numbers were significantly better than the Giants. Numbers in almost every category except for passing yards per game and passing EPA per play. But let's talk about how he likes to call a defense. Likes to play press man when he can, but he just doesn't necessarily have the guys to do that. Blitzing. He's always been bottom of the league in blitz rate and pressure rate, right? Sometimes we see some of the teams with the lowest blitz rate have some of the highest pressure rate, like the 49ers, and obviously that is personnel induced at a lot of times. But blitz rate has been 28th, 26th, and 23rd. The pressure rate 22nd, 18th, and 26th. So he's not someone who likes to send 5 or 6. Now, what he does like to do is something we've seen Patrick Graham do and Wink Martindale do, but Wink Martindale likes to send 5 or 6, where it's the simulated drop 1, send 1 type of pressures, right? So we got 4 down. We're going to drop our edge rusher. So Kayvon, the idea that he's not going to drop into coverage anymore is not true. That's going to happen. They did it with Harold Landry this past year.
Yeah, saw a Titans fan in Nick Filato's replies saying that it drove them crazy how often they would drop Harold Landry in coverage.
Right, so he's going to do those drop 1, send 1 stuff, which again confuses quarterbacks, but it doesn't usually confuse offensive linemen when you're still rushing 4 on that, right? It's still pretty. In fact, it kind of makes things a little easier for the offensive line. If you're only sending 4, depending on where you're sending them from, mostly going to be coming from the DBs, not as much from the linebackers for him. The thing that I like the most is the willingness to use the safeties interchangeably and all over the field. Like a lot of times they're going to start in 2 high coverages and then rotate down a lot, and that's how Xavier McKinney under Patrick Graham, that's where he thrived, right? Because the Patrick Graham in 2021 played a lot of 2 high coverages, but cover 3 was, they were top 5 in the league in running cover 3. When you think of cover 3, you usually think of like a single high stack box coverage. Well, they rotated down into that, and it allowed McKinney to make a lot of plays. So I think McKinney and Pinnock being someone who could play high and low, and I think just adding talent there, I think it's going to be huge because you saw his defenses be the best when they had Amani Hooker and Kevin Byard, and losing those guys. I thought, I got to dive deeper into this most recent film. I thought it hurt them numbers wise and production wise, but I think it didn't give Bowen the confidence to do some of the things that he likes to do.
Yeah, I mean, this past year, so it's interesting. I wonder, Doug Analytics is in the chat right now. Doug, did they run cover 1 and cover 3 more in 2022 and 2021? I'm going to have you pull that up. Hopefully you're still listening. But what Doug was able to pull up in 2023 is that they ran cover 1 at 28% of the time, which was 23rd. So that was the most coverage that they ran. But 23rd highest rate in the National Football League. They ran cover 3, 21%, the 13th highest, cover 4, 16%, that's the 5th highest, and then cover 2, 14%, 20th. So clearly this year, Bowen was trying to really get versatile in the coverages that he would show and the different schemes that he would show. But it seems like, from what everybody's saying, that cover 1 and cover 3 is, the 2 things that he really wants to go to.
Yeah, and it's maybe if you're not lining up, stack the box, single high safety, which he's done a good amount of too, but you're at least rotating down into that, and you have to have safeties who can play downhill and get into the run, which the Giants do have with McKinney and Pinnock. Now, I think their corners and edge room need to get so much better defending the run, because this is, a thought I had, Justin, because the run defenses have been so good. But so were Wink Martindale's before he came to the Giants, right? Yeah. They were 1st, 4th, 8th, 5th, those 4 years. And they came here and they were, 27th and 29th in those 2 years. Now, adding D-line depth and Bobby Okereke helped a lot, but you still had the inconsistent edge setters, and you had a bad DB group stopping the run. Like, their corners were really bad, and that was with good safeties.
And Leonard Williams isn't here anymore.
Say again?
And Leonard Williams isn't here anymore either.
Yeah, Leonard Williams isn't here. Ashawn is available. So there still needs, personnel is what's going to drive production in the run defense. But you do have, if you keep McKinney the safeties to get it done, and you have the linebackers, I think it's going to help Okereke. And then playing from, essentially, even if it's not a stack box pre-snap, having that safety getting downhill to fill is going to allow McFadden to continue to play free and fast. Where if we got into a defense where they just like to play light boxes and stay light, I thought that would hurt McFadden. It would hurt Okereke, but just because it's harder for a linebacker to do there, not because it makes Okereke worse.
I want to put a bow on some stats that I was talking about before. So again, Titans defense allowed the fewest percentage of opponent red zone drives to result in a touchdown. 23 of those drives out of the 61 resulted in a touchdown, 37.7%. And again, thanks to Doug Analytics, out of the 177 total drives for Tennessee's defense, they allowed 61 of them to enter the red zone. So that's second worse. So in a way, if you just look at it from a stat point of view, I don't want to go and make the stretch of schematics, but if you just look at it from a stat point of view, remember the problems that Patrick Graham's defense had 2020 and a little bit of 2021. Definitely like allowing teams to kind of drive down the field, but then you clamp in the red zone. So hey, I mean, obviously you don't want to allow a lot of yards, but I would rather allow 3 than allow 7 all day long. And I want to talk about runs of 10 plus yards and passes of 20 plus yards allowed for Tennessee under Shane Bowen. The league rankings. So let's start off with the good. Runs of 10 plus yards allowed under Tennessee for Shane Bowen since 2021. 2021, it was first. Very good. The least amount. 2022, third. Great. 2023, tied for 7th. That has been the opposite of the Giants, basically, since 2021. We've been like bottom of the barrel in 10 plus yard runs allowed. But since 2021, especially under Wink, passes of 20 plus yards allowed, the Giants have been very good in that category, and that's where the Titans struggle. Passes of 20 plus yards allowed under Shane Bowen, 2021, 27th, 2022, 32nd, and 2023 actually did get better and a jump up to 18th. So, Bobby, that I would say just from this hire, the biggest concern is, I love that you're elite in stopping the run. The AFC South historically is a division, besides this year, obviously Lawrence and Stroud emerged. AFC South is a division that hasn't been very good offensively over the years. So that's 6 games of the year where you're kind of facing somewhat poor offenses. The NFC East is a different beast, and the Cowboys kill us in explosive plays. The Eagles kill us in explosive plays. I think how you lose in today's NFL is you allow explosive plays, and the way that you win in the NFL is you produce explosive plays on offense. We've talked about this. In a vacuum, and kind of just looking at this from up top, that is my biggest worry about this hire, is that this is going to be a defense that's going to allow a lot of explosive pass plays, and that's my worry.
And the worry, again, is like all these disguised coverages and stuff like that are cool, but teams do figure these out in a sense, and they definitely figure them out when they're able to protect, right? And Titans defense has not been able to generate pressure. And that's with a guy like Jeffrey Simmons. That's with Harold Landry, right? They've been able to get some, high sack totals, but not generate pressure. The Giants, while doing these simulated pressures right now, are not a team that looks like it's going to generate a bunch of pressure despite, like hopefully Kayvon can get better in like those down reps, but they were really bad this year. Azeez was really bad this year. Dex is obviously great, but then you lose Leonard Williams. And when you run those disguised coverages, and especially like those inverted coverages, right? Like, one of the defenses they like to go to, which I like running this defense like 1 or twice a game, but when you run it 4 or 5 times, you get big plays. It's like inverted cover 2, right? Where the safeties crash down and then you have a nickel corner or one safety stay high and the nickel corner run deep. Well, if you run a seam against that, you can create a big play, right? And that's how the Browns with Jim Schwartz started to get beat towards the end of the year, was taking advantage of those and also being able to protect. Well, guess what? We don't have the front 4 that Cleveland has that allowed them to do some of that shit to where you can just get there quick.
And also you want to trust Cordell Flott, who clearly had trouble in zone coverage and dropping back and figuring out where he had to go. If Cordell Flott's your starting nickel corner next year, well, hopefully he's not. You really trust in Cordell Flott to get to that spot where when you have safeties crashing down? I don't think so.
I'm looking at Cordell Flott as a hopefully this is a position we need to upgrade. Like Flott to me is not really part of, for me, like any future plans. Not to say we're gonna cut him or anything, but like that to me is just as much of a position of upgrade as any. Like Flott does not change that for me. So that's where, hey, it's going to be a lot on the safeties. It's going to be a lot on Dex, and then Okereke. I think Okereke will look really good in this defense. Another thing that will look really good is DraftKings.
Oh yeah.
Are you looking for a super offer for Sunday for Super Bowl 58? 58 is my number. I'm excited for the Super Bowl. DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered. New customers can bet on the big game and turn $5 into $200 instantly in bonus bets. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code WORLD. New customers can bet $5 to get $200 instantly in bonus bets only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 58 with code WORLD. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or in West Virginia, visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/football for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. You'll be glad that you did. What do you want to hit next on this, Justin?
I saw Research Rick tweeted out about a half an hour ago that this is a Ryan Cowden connection as well. He's an executive advisor to Joe Schoen right now with the Giants. And
well, that's about the only connection that there is to this. There's no connection with Brian Dable, so Brian Dable did go outside of his wheelhouse, and I don't know if there was... Honestly, Justin, we could talk about Jerome Henderson in a little bit. Outside of Jerome Henderson, the rest of the candidates did not look good on paper, right? Brendan Daly, the Chiefs linebacker coach, he was their run game and D-line coach for a few years. Their run defense was really bad in those times. Now, their linebackers have been really good the last couple of years, but I think that's a little bit of who their players are. Willie Gay, Nick Bolton.
They've drafted really well.
And Leo Chanel. Nick
Bolton.
Derek Ansley from the Chargers, their defenses were really bad, right? Shane Bowen was an upgrade over him with the Titans, specifically.
Campanelli.
DeAndre Jones from the Vikings. Their passing defenses have been really bad the last 2 years under two different defensive coordinators, two polar opposite defensive coordinators.
Campanelli would have been the only one where it's like, all right, we kind of have to give you a shot just because we don't know anything about you.
Yeah, Campanelli is. I'm not saying Campanelli's resume is bad. It's just it's a big to be decided because they have not invested. They haven't given him any young players there,
right?
And and the vets haven't been solidified guys there either.
And let me ask you this: do you think Jerome Henderson wants to be a defense coordinator? Because I'm at the point where
I think all these guys do, and that's my worry about Jerome Henderson is that one he's interviewed for is does he kind of say, okay, this is obviously not my spot. Maybe it's time for me to move on after next year when I think his contract would possibly be up. I'm not 100% sure.
How come he hasn't interviewed anywhere else, though, for a D coordinator spot?
Well, no one's asked him to. The Giants, as much as we know Jerome Henderson and like Jerome Henderson, there's nothing that really pops out on go hire Jerome Henderson. And he doesn't really have any guys to fully advocate for him, right? Patrick Graham was his defensive coordinator. He was one of there was no connection there. That came from Jason Garrett, we think. He was there for Wink already, and we know how this relationship soured and shit. So, and again, the passing defense's numbers haven't popped off. We know Jerome Henderson up close and tight, right? Since we've been covering this team, since he's been here. But I do wonder what it's like, because he got passed up for this when their top two candidates and Denard Wilson and Bobby Babich went elsewhere, and they decided, okay, well, we got to interview more people, and then Shane Bowen ended up freeing up from the Titans because the Titans thought about keeping Shane Bowen too, and the Giants ended up going with him. Which again, I thought Bowen and Henderson were like a 3-4 mix for me after those two, but I would rather get Bowen, and then be able to keep Henderson.
Yeah, 100%. Now, Art Stapleton did tweet out that most of the position coaches are likely to stay, which Andre Patterson and Jerome Henderson, I'm really putting a lot of stock on Bowen working out and those two guys being here, because I don't feel, Bobby, I think I was saying this to Patreon, I could be wrong. I'm wrong about a lot of this. I'm wrong about a lot of stuff with this team, but because we have Dexter Lawrence, I feel like there's going to be way more attention that's going to be given to the edge room and the secondary this offseason because you have Dexter Lawrence. Even though, hey, I would always love to draft an interior defensive line because I feel like the Giants are D-tackle you just as a franchise. But I just feel like for where this team is right now, I feel like edge depth is way more important, and I feel like the secondary is way more important for Bowen's defense. So keeping Andre Patterson here to continue to help Dex and form up some of these younger guys like Jordan Riley, DJ Davidson, whoever else they may add. And then Jerome Henderson with Deontay Banks and all the guys he's been able, especially the guys off the scrap heap, that's been the thing that's most impressive about Jerome Henderson, outside of bringing James Bradbury in and James Bradbury playing like an All-Pro in 2020, is that not necessarily the guys that we've invested draft capital in, but it's been the guys that we've taken off the scrap heap and signed off the street for that year, like Isaac Yadam and like Fabian Moreau. That's been the Jerome Henderson masterclasses that have been most impressive, is that those guys have been able to literally start for an entire year and be okay.
Yeah, and what there's multiple angles on why Henderson's been impressive despite none of the numbers popping out for pass defense, even though the Giants have been pretty above average in pass defense since he's been here, is one, the ability to always help the cornerback too, right? Whether it's Yadam or Fabian Moreau, whether it's helping Deontay Banks, have success as a rookie, and then when you have a good one like Adore, giving him a career best year where he was stellar in that role. Getting guys career years at cornerback 1 with Adore and James Bradbury. The safety room, which is really never talked about much. I mean, they've had a bunch of different types of cats in there, right? Jabril Peppers, his versatility using him, helping groom McKinney into like a bad safety at the beginning of 2021 to where he was amazing at the end of the year. Logan Ryan had never played safety until, training camp, and Jerome Henderson had him ready and had him as a good player. And then Love and Pinnock and those guys, getting the most out of them. So Henderson, to me, is much more impressive than numbers may indicate. But Bowen's the one that's called plays, and we are still keeping Henderson at the end of the day.
I hope he stays, yeah. So I hope Art Stapleton's right. And the fact that he is going to stay, that tells me that I don't think he wants to be a D coordinator. Because I
feel like that's a big assumption to say for a guy in a league where everyone's trying to go there. But I do think Jerome Henderson was kind of a deal breaker in this too, where he is valued and he's part of this staff. But
I'd be pissed if he really wanted it. All right, let's just say this. I think there's a difference between maybe wanting something like, yeah, if the opportunity comes, I'll take it, versus like really wanting it. Like, yeah, I really freaking want this. I've earned this. I've been on this staff.
You don't get into this league without being that mindset. Like, that's to me, that's an insane assumption to put on somebody in this league of the NFL.
At the end of the day, I don't think this conversation really matters, but I want to know what's going on in his head, because if I were him and if he really wanted a D coordinator job, I'd be pissed at this franchise. Now through two coaching regimes, I've had an opportunity to interview, and I've done nothing but impress, and I've done nothing but help this team and help these two coaching staffs, and none of them have promoted me to the spot that I want. I would be pissed if he really does want it. I would be pissed.
Well, who says he's not, right? Not everyone's Wink Martindale and lets the whole world know they're pissed. Like we're not going to talk about Kafka much on this, but we know Kafka wanted out, but Kafka didn't feel the need to spend force his way out and stuff. A lot of times the guys are quietly pissed off about this stuff, even if the results are there, and the Giants' results haven't been there.
Just something I'm curious about.
You would think they'd probably bring in Ryan Crows, was the outside linebacker coach for the Titans under Shane Bowen. So it's, again, to kind of recap a little bit, I know this isn't the longest episode in the world, and I want to talk about Andy Bischoff leaving and all that good shit too, is that runs a 3-4 defense, likes to throw, the simulated send one, drop one type pressures, right? But they rush for it at the end of the day. He likes to rush for it at the end of the day, and has not been able to produce pressure and consistently, right? Has been able to produce some decent sack numbers, but not that consistent pressure. We'll throw a disguised coverages. We'll play from two high safeties and rotate down a lot. One of their, they don't have they don't live out of one coverage, right? They're not really top 5 in the NFL in any type of coverage most years. And I think the safety position is huge for what he wants to do. I think if he doesn't trust the safeties, you might see more single high stack boxes. If not, he's going to rotate guys down. And I think McKinney being part of that. The run defense has always been good. The pass defense has always been below average, and has led to basically an average defense in 3 years as the Titans defensive coordinator.
Yeah. Now, something that I didn't talk about, and this is probably the thing that encourages me the most outside of the third down defense and the red zone defense. We know how a bad offense can lead to bad defense, especially in the second half, right? If you look at the Giants' splits in the first half and to the second half, in the first half they have one of the best defenses in the league, especially towards the second half and latter part of the year. In the second half they've had they're a bad defense. It doesn't matter when you split it up. So, Titans were in a similar boat where the Titans' offense was inconsistent this year. So, I wanted to look at the Titans' first half numbers. Titans' passing defense in the first half of games last year looks much better than their overall numbers. 11th in EPA per play total overall. The Giants were 12th. 8th against the pass and 12th against the run. So, that's more encouragement. So, I kind of, as we're looking at this hire and as we're being like, it's not a sexy hire. It's not a hire that makes us really excited. Joe Shane's going to need to draft well and develop well. They're going to need to sign guys. I'm like ending off being like, I'm cool with this. I'm good. Because at the end of the day, the Giants' offense scoring points at an above average rate is what is going to make this entire team so much better. And I don't want to just say, offense or bust or whatever like that, and defense doesn't matter. But I think this Bowen defense and this Giants defense next year will be a good unit if the Giants offense is holding up their end of the bargain.
And I still think there's a lot of TBD on Shane Bowen too, right? For one, he's 37 years old. That's I know the league is getting a little younger with their coaching staffs. That's still really young. In his 3 years as defensive coordinator, he's had Mike Vrabel and Jim Schwartz looking over his shoulder, right? Which is, those are guys that have both been moved to head coaches after being defensive coaches in the NFL, and Schwartz, coached, a top defense in the NFL this past year with the Browns. So I think there's some things you can change. Like, Patrick Graham, he did some different things on his own after kind of getting out from underneath Brian Flores, right? Where they had difference of view. So I think there will be some different stuff that he likes to do. This will be his first time just completely running the show. So, growth from his last spot, different personnel. So there still is a lot of to be decided with him. But again, I see someone who prioritizes stopping the run without, not in the old school way of like, let's just stack the box. Let's set up our fronts this way. But I think setting up the fronts to stop it, and then filling with good safety play and good run defense from safety play. But you just didn't see a ton of really helping out guys who have deficiencies, right? Those guys have just kind of struggled in his defense. And that's the Warriors. The Giants still are looking to add a ton of talent, and not just talent, but depth, right? They need talent in a big important positions and depth. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. There's still a lot. I want to dive into all the 2023 film, maybe live stream some of it throughout the week, just walking through it, just like, hey, let's just chart it. Stunts, simulated pressure, rotating coverages, right? Not getting too deep into it. But you've seen him be able to flex his muscles in the red zone and third down consistently, been able to consistently stop the run. It's just how can they get to be a consistently good pass defense, which has just not happened since he's been there.
Doug Analytics is putting a bow on what we talked about 15 minutes ago. Coverage frequencies for 2022 is basically the same as 2023. So remember what I said, how that may be different 15 minutes ago? It wasn't. Not based on personnel.
So, yeah, I mean, again, liking to run cover 4 and cover 2, which you can be high in the league in cover 4 and cover 2, but also, that still will make up a quarter of the plays combined.
Yeah.
Right? Like, at the end of the day, it's cover 1 and cover 3 is what he lives out of. The question is, how does he get to that, right? You can get to cover 3. When Patrick Graham changed to a too high defense, mostly, they still ran cover 3 at a top 5 rate in the NFL. You rotate down into it, right? So I think you're going to see some stuff like that.
So, let's talk about players that we're most excited for with this transition, and I think it's undoubtedly it's Xavier McKinney, correct? Yeah,
absolutely. Having Xavier McKinney was good in the Wink Martindale scheme, but Xavier McKinney wasn't really going to flex all that he's about. So I think keeping Xavier McKinney is a must in this defense. I think you can start seeing him have some of the numbers that he had under Patrick Graham. I won't say Dex because Dex is just great and whatever, but again, he's not going to be moving away from that nose tackle role. And I think Okereke.
Yeah. David Long Jr., who went to Miami, he was really good in 2021 and 2022 as well. Both more athletic guys can fly sideline to sideline, right?
Yeah, so I think Okereke, look, I know you're going to be talking about Harold Landry and stuff, and with Kayvon, I think Kayvon's improvement will come on his own shoulders and not really much of a scheme change.
Right.
I think if the Giants hired Leslie Frazier, Kayvon would have some improvement in his numbers just by the way defenses play. Teams play those defenses, but I think Kayvon's improvement is on himself. To me, it just doesn't really hurt anyone besides Cordell Flott. But to me, Cordell Flott was hurt anyways because he's so bad in run defense. Because there's so many missed assignments when in the few times they ran zone. To me, he's a player that needs to be upgraded anyways. Even if Wink Martindale stayed, I probably would have been, the unpopular opinion of we need to upgrade nickel corner. We cannot have a 170-pound guy in there.
Kevin Byard had 9 interceptions, I believe 5 in 2021 and then 4 in 2022. So it would be cool if we could see Xavier McKinney get back to those high interception numbers that he showed under that year of Patrick Graham. Now, however...
It'll be interesting to see how does Bowens change, right? Because he's going into a new staff. I mean, they had the least amount of interceptions in the NFL this past year.
Right.
They only had 6.
But this was the first year that Byard was gone. He was a Philadelphia Eagle.
With Jim Schwartz gone, 1. And then they just had bad DB, really bad DB play across the board.
Yeah.
And then not being the generated pressure goes. I mean, they just had the fact that they somehow ended up being 16th in points per game this past year is wild with how bad they were in passing and just having a lack of talent across the board, really.
I mean, we're talking about McKinney like he's here, but he's not. So this is going to be really interesting to see. And now Joe Shane has done a good job of not negotiating against himself. What's this contract going to look like for McKinney? Because maybe, I don't know if this is how this works, but him and his team could look at, hey, you just signed a defensive coordinator where my stats are inevitably going to go up. Look at the safeties that have been here previously. Look at the good Pro Bowl All-Pro safeties that have been here in the past. Their stats are good. Even though my stats haven't been good, maybe I deserve that money. I deserve a higher contract. The franchise tag is obviously in play, but is that solely a Saquon Barkley franchise tag? It's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out.
I think McKinney should be back for a few reasons outside of Shane Bowen. One, I do not think the Giants are at a place in roster building where they can let good players that they drafted walk away. One, which Xavier McKinney is, and there's not very many that fit that profile, right? I think that's the most important thing. And 2, despite that he is a pain in the ass sometimes, and that the fact that I don't view him really as a leader, even though he's, a team captain and stuff, is that if the Giants win, he's going to be fine. And if they lose, he's going to be annoying. But he hasn't gotten to the point where there's shit that popped up a few times this past year, but none of that was I am totally out on this guy. Now, when guys get paid and they feel a different type of,
entitlement.
Entitlement or whatever, and they feel a little more emboldened, right? Remember when Odell won the contract, it was the most well-behaved he was. A month later, he's on ESPN the morning before, with an interview airing the morning before the game. And it's oh God, what did we just do? I don't think McKinney would ever get to that point. McKinney doesn't have the clout to get to that point. But nonetheless, I think he's a good player, and not everyone, we don't need cookie cutter, perfect fall in line type players across the board. If the Giants win, it's awesome. If they lose, it sucks, and losing sucks regardless. So why don't you talk to us about something before we talk about some other staff stuff with the Giants?
Oh, I'll talk to you about something. Bobby Skinner, you're confident in the office. Oh, boy. At the dinner table, oh, yeah. And even on the dance floor.
What about Danny King? What about Danny King?
Danny King, he's even more confident than you in the office at the dinner table and even on the dance
floor.
What
about Danny King with the other part?
But can you keep it going? And can Danny King keep it going when he goes back to the bedroom? Well, guess what? With Hims, Danny King, you, me, and everyone can get access to medications to ensure your erectile dysfunction gets treated. You hear that, Danny? So you can keep the confidence going all day and all night. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing access to affordable and discreet sexual health treatments, all from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to clinically proven generic alternatives to Viagra and Cialis up to 95% cheaper with options as low as $2 per dose. Whoa! And the process is simple, 100% online, which means no uncomfortable doctor's visits. You hear that, Danny King? You don't need to even get off your couch. You don't need to go to the doctor. It can be done from your living room. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/giants. That's HIMS.com/giants for your personalized ED treatment options. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. Bobby Skinner, Danny King, and everybody, you'll be glad you did.
You'll be glad you did. Andy Bischoff, the tight end coach, he's out. He went and joined the Chargers under Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman. He's getting the run game coordinator title there. I know because of very real issues with the Wink fallout and this Kafka stuff, which again I want to have an interview to flesh the Kafka stuff out a little more, because the idea that everything's hunky dory there is just not true at all. He did want to leave. The Giants stopped him from leaving. And play calling, where does that all fit into that? I think we can have that conversation on the next podcast a little more in an interview. Now that, by the way, the defensive coordinator hire was holding us hostage all in the offseason. There was things we wanted to do, but it's like, but if we don't want this to get dated if they hire a defensive coordinator, which we almost broke. We were 2 minutes away from having an interview, Justin, and then they hired the defensive coordinator. But Andy Bischoff, I don't view this as part of like, oh, look at the culture and Dable's hard to work with, which, hey, that could be part, but he got an upgrade. He gets to go back and coach with Greg Roman. He was under John Harbaugh with the Ravens. Now Jim Harbaugh here. To me, this is, even though the Giants could have blocked this is an upgrade in his role as a coach. And I don't think Andy Bischoff is the one that is having ego. I mean, he seems like the most egoless coach in the building, to be honest. Yeah. I think this is truly a better opportunity for him.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have much reactions to it either.
Remember Chris Myrick said he's like just very PG, and he would just be like, he listening to some of their conversation in the film room and just be like, oh boy, you guys are crazy.
I wonder if they're going to promote, am I getting Angela Baker? Is that a name that I'm pulling out of thin air?
No, yeah, she worked with the tight end. She was the tight end coach at the Shrine Bowl.
So is she the assistant tight ends coach right now?
Yeah.
That'd be kind of cool.
I'd like the Giants to go out and get a different tight end. Like, I don't feel like the Giants tight ends are so good that they can just upgrade the tight end spot. I'd like them to go get a different tight end coach. Are you saying you hate Angela Baker? I'm saying I want a different tight end coach.
Are you saying you hate women possibly being in prominent positions of coaching?
Just tight end coach. And, any other position coach, fine, just tight end coach. Men only in the tight end coaching room, right? Sure. Hey, we just talked about imagine the jokes that the tight ends are making with Andy Bischoff. They'd be even worse with Angela Baker in the room. Just kidding. I know nothing about Angela Baker besides 1 minute of a social clip they put out. We
didn't make any fighting over last slices of pizza jokes about Bowen and Dable. That's going to be the biggest conflict that they have.
Yeah.
I can see it now.
It is crazy how important that last slice of pizza was to Wink Martindale.
It was huge. I mean, is he from New Jersey? Are you fucking kidding me?
Any come down from the Senior Bowl at all?
I'm exhausted. I'm still very tired. No, it was a good trip. Accomplished a lot. Thanks for everybody that follows along. Hope we get to do it again. That's the main takeaway from it. So
yeah, I'm trying to think, was there any other new? Let me just scroll through the Talking Giants account, make sure we didn't miss anything. So Andy Bischoff is gone, tight end coach, obviously. So the Giants need to hire an outside linebacker coach, a tight end coach, and that's it that they have left. They replaced their offensive line coach, they replaced their running back coach. So the rest is there. We'll see if he keeps. I think Patterson and Henderson are safe. It'd be interesting to see if they keep Agoragwu as a linebacker coach.
Shea Tierney stock up or down after the Senior Bowl game?
I mean, his quarterbacks Sam Hartman did play really bad.
All right, so Shea Tierney stock down.
Yeah, maybe. Michael Penix dropped out of the Senior Bowl, which was kind of disappointing.
Oh, what was that? That's the first blemish on Michael Penix.
Yeah, playing the game.
Practice
He's only going to play a
practice the whole
series or
week.
two. Yeah, but he's only going to play a series or two. Bo Nix only played a couple of series. Pro Bowl. Dex actually really contributed to the NFC winning.
Hell yeah.
Like the tug of war, they win because of him. And I was surprised. The starting of like the gridiron thing, and I was there, by the way. It was him versus Quinnen Williams. He smoked Quinnen Williams, right? And it was basically a battle of speed, and he smoked Quinnen Williams. So the any debate that those guys are the same. So Dex really helped in that. Can I say something since we're talking about the Pro Bowl? I hate that everyone cried, the Pro Bowl stinks, they got to change this. No.
Did you enjoy it?
It's just not. Hey, listen, the Pro Bowl is, again, it's not going to be some great game. It's not what it used to be, but let it just be an 11-on-11 game where you go out there and play football.
No, so here's the thing.
I hate that what they
change
it to. Because it's not a good. I bet you less people watch it. It's watching flag football is like a really not a great. Like I had fun there, but it's not a great viewing experience when you're there.
Okay. Because I was gonna be like, if I saw you saying that whole thing on social media about like, stop complaining that you don't like it, but then if your rebuttal was going to be, stop saying you don't like it because you're tweeting that you don't like, you enjoy that you're saying that you don't like it, but I actually had a really good time. I thought that was the rebuttal that you were going to give, but no, you still don't like it.
This new thing?
Yeah.
No, because for years everyone complained that they have to change the Pro Bowl, and it's like, no, this is not going to be a perfect event.
Oh,
just leave it as is, and they complained enough to where they ended up changing it to what it was. And I do think the players deserve some disrespect in this too. They got way too lackadaisical with it. It's one thing to not go super hard, right, like they did in the early 2000s, where they were just like running the ball, and Sean Taylor killed Brian Mormon. It's one thing to not do that, but they got so lackadaisical the last couple of years where it's like, well, you guys are ruining this too. So I think the fans and the players ruined it, and I'm pissed because it should be a good event, and it should be after the Super Bowl. It should be the come down from the Super Bowl too.
They should do the NFL honors and then the Pro Bowl.
They screw up their timeline very much. The NFL honors being the weekend of the Super Bowl is so stupid. Those are perfect off-season like topics to talk about and give their due credit. But it's like here's our Hall of Fame, here's our MVP, here's Rookie of the Year. Okay, Super Bowl tomorrow. I'll see you there. Forget about all this shit.
You know, Pat Mahomes wins MVP last year, and it's a pre-recorded speech because he's playing in the Super Bowl the next day.
Yeah, it's so stupid.
And how that shit doesn't get leaked, by the way. You know, NFL draft picks, which they treat like, you know, state secrets. I think it's because it's one of those things that we all know Lamar's winning the MVP. So it's not like it's even anything worth being leaked. Yeah. You would still think somebody would. And I think because the TV partners, like the big heads, like Schefter and Rappaport, just don't tweet it out. All right, that's an episode. We'll be back Friday. Probably try and get in. I mean, Dunleavy did win the Tony Award, so maybe we can have Dunleavy on for Friday to. I want to tease some stuff because odds are maybe you're listening to this, maybe you're not listening to this at this point because we stopped talking about informational stuff. Throughout the next couple weeks, hopefully we're gonna have some really good interviews with some people that you're not expecting, and I'll leave it at that. But it's not a promise. Oh, that reminds me, I got to message that guy. It's not a promise, but. We're going to have some interviews with some people that you're not expecting. Definitely one, because we already have one in the books. It's already confirmed that we're recording it. Are you talking about the one that I'm going there for, or the other one? No, the other one. Yeah, we got that. That one's booked. Okay. All right. Well, we'll see you then. Appreciate you guys, and we're going to dive into the film on this defensive coordinator, all that good stuff. So we'll have a little more to report back on Friday, plus an interview. Until then, let's go Big Blue.